so nice to have you. Thank you for joining.
It's my pleasure.
Cool.
Good to be here.
Nice. Okay, cool. So yeah, we're here to talk about a product design. Kind of found you through an event on the Zapped community, and thought product design is quite a subject that people are talking about these days. Well, not talking about, but it's like a new role that's kind of evolving. So I thought maybe you could just shed some light for us and maybe start by telling us about yourself and how you got into the role.
So I started off a human, curious about everything, like pretty, and I wanted to touch everything and feel everything. So the arts were like always, I think, there for me, and I just like beautiful things out there. So and then obviously as you go through high school, you kind of get like, okay, aptitude test, what are you going to do after high school, where you're going to land in university side, and I got to choose between either being a vet, an engineer, or graphic design. So I chose the graphic design. Yeah, I chose the graphic design route just because I loved art and I did art at school, and so formally trained as a graphic designer. And we did illustration with it and art history. So that background knowledge is always with me, and I appreciate good quality design and art out there. Stumbled into the industry, did like pure graphic design work, was fortunate enough to like have really awesome mentors wherever I worked, and then did a UX masterclass, and I fell in love with the process. I was like, this is the space I want to be in. And I was more of a conceptual thinker, and with branding and being involved in graphic design, you got to work on a portion of it. You didn't get to like work on like the full spectrum of where this product or this company you're working with can go. But the conceptual stage was the fun one, like unpacking it and really strategizing where it could go. And then after that UX masterclass, I was like, okay, no, I'm going to go into it, upskill myself even further, like into it, research it, and then went freelance and started like just dive into the whole UX UI thing and unpacking what a product designer actually does. And I felt that role really fit my skill set and my personality, and my skills that I want to actually evolve a bit and get better at, and I'm curious about things. So I usually think about, okay, yes, it's a product that you're designing and you're exploring for, but I kind of sneakily add the word experience, like product experience designer, because I just feel like I can see the whole bigger picture, I know where this is going, and just that I'm designing experiences. I'm listening to like multiple people on a team and how we're thinking about the experience and what we want the end user to actually experience, and how do we want business to experience, and even our team, like the teams I'm working with, what is our experience? And so I think that's, for me, that's where the little bug is like just biting, and I'm just going for it, and just never like stop and upskilling myself. Like there's constantly things like user testing. That's one of the things now. I'm like, yeah, how do you properly do this? Like, can someone just show me this? I want to be good at this too, but then do I really? Like you're validating like what you want and what you want to get out of a project you're on. But yeah, I just love the whole fact that I can see from a graphic design perspective where I've had the opportunity to learn those fundamentals of what is good design and what is layout, what are grids, and how you need to work with it. And I can translate that into a digital space that I'm working in now, that I find myself in, which I'm like fully enjoying. But I can also see a larger picture of how this is fitting in to the overall strategy, overall vision of where things are going. So yeah, that's what I'm enjoying, and that's where I find myself in these days.
I've got so many questions. You like just
go.
I'm like, see if I can remember them all. But that was fantastic.
Okay, go
for that. But yeah, that journey is very interesting, and I actually just want to touch on it a bit, because I get the sense that a lot of people that get into whether it's UX or product design started at graphic design. So how was that? How's that natural path? How do people make that connection? I mean, obviously it's in the design, but for those people out there that aren't sure, just give us how that little transition happens, and why is it so common that you find that?
So I think as a graphic designer, you kind of start to learn where your craft sits and what you want to, where your skill set is actually strong in. And for me, yes, I was good at like branding and designing things, but I was also strong in that conceptual, that pre-phase. And you get designers that just want to craft. They will sit with layouts and they will craft it. And I think I'm going to step on toes, so I'm looking forward to all the comments that will come. But I feel that UI design is it's what you see at the end of the day. It's that beautiful layout. It's that interaction. It's where things are placed. And that for me is where I think that part of me comes in as a graphic designer, and that's where the thinking or where the aesthetics lies. But it's thought about. There's a purpose behind it, and that's where the UX, the experience, the user experience side of me comes in. And the jump, I don't think it's a difficult jump to go from graphic design to a product design. It's just your medium is changing. You're not you're still working on a computer, but it's not necessarily print. It doesn't like manifest in something like paper, but it goes into more of an app form, or more of a software form, in a tech space. But I think, graphic designers, I think, finds it easier to just reroute in that direction because they have the fundamentals. That's typography, composition, spacing, and all of that. So they have it naturally within them. It's those little extra skills that you get to learn in this space, and that you get to just work on and make it a bit better. So I think that's why so many graphic designers are like, just, okay, cool, next level, let's move on, next level. So
And I want to touch on some of the points you made previously about kind of that growth and the community and all of that. We were talking about it also offline, but the fact that the industry is still so fresh in South Africa. I know it's been around for a long time. Someone I work with was one of the first people that got into UX, and it wasn't that long ago. When I say get into UX, I mean in South Africa. And do you think that there's a lack of support out there, or lack of knowledge, or why is there such a gap in the understanding of this? I mean, people are still trying to get their head around UX, and now we're talking product design. And we've got design thinking that's been around forever as well. I mean, we can dive into that later, but just what's your view on that whole gap that South Africa seems to have?
I think, we're not in a position where we learned about art and graphic design. If you look at the institutions that's out there, they're quite set in their ways. Like, you have your private stuff would be like your triple A's, your red and yellows and all of that. And then you have university, and they're like, I don't know what else they are, but they maybe have like a more traditional sense of what design is, and it maybe came from art, like what is fine art, then goes into a bit more something that's different, and so many different entry points actually. And I think in South Africa, we will always be somewhat a step behind, but we might jump little like process steps between each processes.
Both can be
and then I think it's because our education system didn't allow to evolve with time, so it was quite stagnant. And now everyone is kind of waking up and saying, oh, we need to catch up in our design or information design pieces, and how we think about things and how we approach graphic design, because it's not like, I didn't actually learn anything about design thinking. It wasn't in my course or anything. And now I'm like, wow, where was this? This makes so much more sense. Well, why hasn't it been introduced to me much earlier? The light bulbs are just going on now. But I mean, but then it's also, I think our culture is like, we want to learn, we want to know more, so we're curious. We just go out and we upskill, and we look for opportunities, and we just go for it. If we don't have any experience, like, we find a way to gain it. Like, we all have internet access by now and the YouTube, and there's always someone throwing out a tutorial that you can follow and you can upskill. So
subscribe to this.
I think
the same.
Subscribe to the newsletter. Like, there you go. But I think.
So, what would your advice?
Quite resilient.
Sorry. So, what would your advice for a beginner be? Someone that's looking to get into it, that maybe has done other sides of design, and has heard about the opportunities that live within product design. What would your advice be for someone that's quite fresh into the field?
Sure, I would advise them to look at, the usual saying is like look at like meetups or places where information is being shared, and look at who is sharing this information and see how you can connect in some way. I know it's like a big thing to do, but a simple email, I think if you're a person that wants to contribute to the community, you're going to answer an email that goes in. If you can't help, you might redirect. So I think just putting yourself out there and never stop trying. I think it's don't give up. Like you will get someone that will help you, even if it's just a little bit of advice. And look at industries that you want to be involved with. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. Sorry for interrupting. I wanted to ask, like, what about, like, you said you did the masterclass. You've got Udemy. What are there like good places for them that they can go and pick up on some courses or workshops or something like that?
So Udemy was for me an easy and quick and easy way to actually and it's also a cheaper option if you just want to upskill and pay for something. But then look at maybe companies or little studios that are offering UX workshops and try to get them, go to them and I don't know if they are still running it physically or if they are doing maybe webinar stuff, but yeah, I think that is just see who's sharing information and learn about who is in the industry and look at them and try to connect in some way. And I think there's a lot of companies that are willing to take in people with less experience, but it has like experience in a different industry and want to bring it into the whole product spectrum. Because I think the more diversity you have, the better, because you're working with different use cases at the end of the day, and you're just getting insights from team members. You understand like, okay, well, I'm not designing for myself. Listen, I'm not the user. I can't be precious about the solution I have, but just getting that input and collaboration. Oh, I love it. It's frustrating at times, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
No, sometimes you're like, shh, I'm a designer, let me do this. But then other times you're like, please help me.
Yes.
Please help me.
So that's great. You've kind of started diving into the actual role now, and that's where I want to take this next. So you spoke about product design being a little bit more strategic. It's not quite just the designing or the UX or the wireframes. So can you kind of give us some insights into what you actually do? So if I had to just use the phrase problem solving, because that's where the biggest thing comes from, right? And you spoke about use cases. So just kind of dive into the role itself and how do you tackle solving problems, and what does that even mean for someone that's like, why is someone solving problems?
First of all, let's just talk about, is this a problem? Like, let's define if this is really the problem we need to solve, and what steps can I take. So I think it's talking to people in the field or the problem you're solving for. Don't just, I think, obviously talk to business who comes up with the problem and they want to solve for it, but understand why they are seeing it. Understand the users they want to potentially solution for, but then talk to those users as well. I think there's a big gap between we are a bit more business focused, like we need to follow all the business rules that's being set up and that's what they want, but we forget about the humans that are actually using the product at the end of the day. The community that is using it might have different solutions already, and you wouldn't know it if you don't go out and ask and understand and unpack it. I think it's amazing what some people might already come up with, and how you can maybe just put things together and make it sit in a certain way that's easier to use. I think that's where the fun part lies in. But I think it's also just drawing that line of how much input you get from both sides, and then just start to work, because it can take very long to just define the problem. So it's defining what is the problem, is it a problem, how's it fitting into our environment or into the environment they want to solve for. And then it goes for me naturally into, let's come up with solutions. Maybe it's like a brainstorming section. It's something you work on your own for a bit and then you collaborate. I know I'm not someone that can just like collaborate and shoot ideas from there. That's not me. Like, give me my alone time. Let me just figure it out for myself, and I'll come in. And I love collaboration. Like, I love working with different designers and different people. And that's a way that I start to validate my thinking and my assumptions that I have. And I think validating assumptions is the biggest thing to do,
Yeah.
because you can think like you know what you're doing, but actually it's not going to work. And then yeah, getting into like, oh, I can actually start the design and put something together, but don't skip out on that paper phase, that I would call it, like drawing out, getting your ideas out, putting it to paper. Like, yes, we all want to rush to computer and like quickly go, and that's it, because our times are limited. Like, we're working towards deadlines and expectations are being set of when something would be delivered. But can you actually put time on creative work? Like I think that's the biggest pain point for all of us.
How do you deal with that? Because when you're solving a problem, the discovery phase can take from 10 minutes to 10 weeks.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
how do you deal with that? I know that you've spoken about, you know, solving alone, and the, you know, Jake Knapp, I know you're a fan of the Sprint book. You know, there's those different collaborators. You've got brainstorming, and then you've got self kind of, you know, going into your own bubble. So how do you deal, especially you use that dreaded word in our whole industry, in the whole product industry, deadlines. How do you deal with that discovery phase when you've got that dreaded word hanging over you?
Like, personally, I love a deadline, so that I know I need to, and sometime I need to reach that point, so that I just know the back of my, otherwise I can spend days thinking about it and not actually like working on it. I can think about it, but it's still not like physical work that can be delivered. But that's like a self thing, and I think I need deadlines too in my personal life. But it is a difficult one. It's like I said, you actually can't put time to creativity, but it's the norm. Like, people want things delivered at a certain time. I think it's also how you communicate it and how the team communicates it. I think setting up those boundaries with your clients or with the business or whoever you're working with, just to know that this is the process you're buying into, this is the value that we want to offer you. And I think if you want a rush project, then you can have this and that. But if you like just allow us to like take you on the journey and just be transparent, I think that transparency and keeping people involved in the process is important.
Do you like to go into an MVP route where, you know, the whole lean of like, let's keep it small and simple, or do you like to kind of flesh out a problem and then find the MVP within that?
Oh, I like big problems. I like to flesh out everything and then like narrow, okay, cool, this might work. Because I think, yes, MVP is great, and I know there's the whole saying like ship fast, fail fast thing. Great, but understanding that, just make a note to yourself, like, there are multiple use cases that we might not think of now, but let's just document it. Let's just keep it at the back of our mind, but we are solving for this now. Always, going back to what you want to solve, what you need to solve, what that problem is, and how you're solving for it, is just keeping that compass for you where you're going. But documentation, history, like possible things that you think of that might not be useful now, but just keep it there, because that day might come that you need to go into it and you're like, I haven't thought about this, and then you just go back and you read it and you're like, cool, no, I thought about this can work maybe.
Brought up another interesting word in the whole scheme of things. So if you are following Agile, you talk about documentation. So how big of a role is documentation in this process?
For me, it's a big thing. I know as designers, we don't have time to actually go and document everything, and just, time is our biggest like crippler on our way. But it is important to have that documentation. Really just document your design thinking, your design process, and design decisions that you're making, because come a presentation or come a question where you like get answered, but why did you choose that specific design system or design component or flow or mental flow for it? You can go back and you can like direct into, this was the insight that we gathered, this was the design system that we chose for it. I think it just gives you that piece of confidence and that you need when you present your work, because I know presenting work it's not the most easiest thing in the world. It is daunting.
I feel sorry for UX designers. They have to pour their hearts out into these designs, and then let's hope they don't tear it apart.
Yeah, and if they do, you're like, can I cry now or later? When can I cry? But yeah, it's part of the process, but it's a bitter one to swallow. It's tough.
Yeah, no, it's important, and especially if you feel strongly about something, because you started off by saying something, I don't know if it was offline or not, but like, you're not designing for yourself, you're designing for other people. It's one of the first rules in product design or UX. So yeah, when you feel strongly about something and you have to push back, that's a fun.
No, it's not fun at all. Like,
yeah, I see some scar tissue there somewhere.
Oh. No, but I think you develop, like, when to do the battle. Just go, you like pick your battles, and things like, just leave it, let's just do what they want. They're gonna like nitpick and like tear it apart constantly. Just like, leave it, go on. If they're wrong, you can just like walk away and be like, oh, that didn't work, I told you so. But you don't say it, you just
Okay, and then tell me, so I've always wondered, now obviously there's UX, we have UI, and now there's the product design. And at the talk that you gave, my question to you was, I don't know if you remember it, but where does a product owner fit in when you've got a product design? Because both are kind of looking at it from a strategic point of view. Let's talk a product manager, same thing. So there seems to be quite an overlap between the two roles, and I feel like there's space for them both. But how do you see those two roles sort of, working together? Yeah.
So for me, it's always nice to work with a good product owner or product manager. I think if they do like the questioning and the writing up and like just documentation correctly, you have like a solid base to go back on, and you can purely focus on not just the creative side, but the solving of the flow side. But I do think it's a team effort, because you're both, at the end of it, speaking to all the multiple team members. But it is a role that requires their own skill set and knowing how to work with people, because they need to like make sure everyone's on the same like level, alignment. Like we all are having this alignment. Please have alignment and the same vision, and constantly reinforcing that, where I think that is like your partner that you need as a product designer. It's just to have that voice, that accountability partner that keeps you on the right track, that keeps the whole team on the right track. Because sometimes you as a product designer will sit out in some meetings because it's not part of it doesn't aid to your process just yet. So there's sometimes you need to sit in, but they can like stand in for you and like rebut it. But is it possible to do both roles? Yes, I think so. It depends on your personality and the skill set you bring to the team, and if it's more in your personality to manage and to lead and to be that person who keeps everyone like aligned and everything, so then go for it. But I think as a product designer, it gets quite it's a lot of responsibility to take on that as well. If you need to be focusing on the UI as well of the whole thing, you can't juggle everything.
No, I mean, I'm just thinking of the discovery phase, let alone the UI designs, and especially depending on where the product is in its life cycle. I mean, are you starting from scratch, or is it just solving a small problem in the grand scheme?
Yeah.
But I think it could get quite crazy for a product designer taking it all on.
Yeah, no, you need a team. It takes a team. It's a community.
Sure, I had a question and it's gone. This happens. I wanted to ask, how do you entrench yourself into a problem? So now we've spoken about it, and something that I've always been very intrigued about is the relationship. Okay, I've spoken about the relationship with the product manager, but you obviously need the product lead, the tech side of things. So you entrench yourself in a problem, you take it to the dev and explain that situation, explain that relationship.
And then the dev tells you, no, it's not going to work because it's not technical feasible. And then you're like, okay, but what is the solution for it then? Like, help me. And they just look at you. But you're the designer, aren't you? No.
Sounds great.
That is like one of
Scrum Master.
One of my
get them to contact me.
my big peeves sometimes is just a dev telling you, no, it's not going to work, and then like, okay, but help me out then. Like, just tell me what is technically feasible. And I mean, devs are a species on their own. Like, they're such a unique bunch, and it's like always fun to work with them and to hear their inputs. And yeah, but
they're
for
problem
me,
solving in a different way. Hey, their problem
oh,
solving
totally.
is like numbers and commas and all those
Oh
things.
yeah, no, it's like their own language that they need to follow and know. But for me, how I would go about it, or just involving like, into that space again, it is coming up with possible solutions, not just one, but then go and validate that thinking with the tech team, with the engineering team, and just hear their input. But I think also they need to be involved with what is some of the insights from the users, what is that empathy layer that they also need to note within a product's life cycle, because I think they can obviously think a bit more like black and white. So that's the logical thinking that kicks in, because this thing needs to work and it needs to touch points and it needs to throw out data. So that's data driven, but they need to know, like, empathy wise, why are we following this type of use case, with who are we, like, what is our thinking behind it, and involving them slowly throughout the product lifecycle, or the journey from how you interrogate the problem that you're solving and the solutions and ideation phase. I think it's valuable for them to just sit in and participate, because sometimes they might have a great solution for it, and they might be like, oh well, we can maybe do this, and then they understand where the thinking is coming from. So I don't believe like keeping people out of the journey only starting them in when you need it. I think there should be like a overarching like integration of your design of your team.
Yeah.
In all parts of a product.
Yeah. So I went to a talk and I think it was called the Three Amigos, and they spoke about the three main players, and it's your tech lead, your product designer, and your product manager. You get those three working strongly together, and you're going to solve some awesome problems. And I've experienced it. It's actually addictive. It feels so good. Like when you see how it unravels, I love it.
Yeah. And also engineering team that understands like what is good design. At the end of the day, like I know like some amazing front-end developers that can just take your designs and it look exactly what you've done, and they understand the spacing, like just from a aesthetics level. Like I'm like, yes, thank you for doing this.
You need it, Almari. You need it.
For me, it's just I can't get pixel perfect.
You're not a UX designer if you're not worried about pixels. That's like the golden rule somewhere.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So I think a big question that gets thrown around often, and I don't think there's a right answer, but maybe there is. But what tools do you use? What are your favorite tools to work for this? So also for a beginner that's, scared to now go and buy a subscription for, let's say Figma. What tools do you prefer? And then going back to those beginners, some of the newbies watching, like how can they start getting their feet wet on doing some design work?
So for me, the tools that I use on a daily basis is definitely Figma. So I am a big advocate for Figma. I don't know, it was so natural, just like going from learning or constantly working in the Adobe Creative Cloud, like Illustrator and InDesign, and knowing where tools are and what tools mean, was a seamless integration for me to just go into Figma. I don't do all of my design. If I need to do like special like illustrations or infographics, I don't necessarily do them in Figma. I'll go back to default into Illustrator because that's where I'm comfortable and I can just work super fast in it.
Okay, interesting.
But and then I can just pull up those like vectors into Figma and design from there. But I think Figma is quite a cool tool to use. I know there are other tools. I haven't explored them. Like I know there's like a whole framer thing that people might be using and that has like unique features that Figma is maybe that sits in a different place. It takes you a bit longer to get there, but that's something I was introduced to a few weeks ago. I was like, okay, whoa, I need to go and see what this is all about now. So I need to find some project that I can like test it on, a personal project maybe. Just test that on. But for people that are just starting out, I think Figma is a good place to start, and then find tutorials that you can follow step by step if you want to know what the software
But is
is
there like a trial period on Figma for people to use?
You can still sign up for a personal account, and you can have like 3 or 4, I think it's 3 project files that you have, and then a lot of sub files that you can have underneath before you need to start to pay. And I think if it's only you don't collaborate with the team, there's still a free function. But once you go into a team environment, you might need to consider finding going into a team plan. But yeah, I think go find some tutorials. My favorite tutorials to watch is Pablo Stanley's like tutorials on how to use certain functions. I think that guy is amazing, and how he just presents creative work and how he goes about it. His personality is just cool. I just love him. Like I want to be him when I grow up.
When you grow up, one day.
When I grow up. Yeah.
Cool. But yeah, please send me a link so I can put that in the description for the peeps watching. Cool. Let's start wrapping up. Let's start with book recommendations. What book has stood out for you in your design or your product design journey that you recommend?
Sure. The more I get involved with the whole product design journey and the whole product space and understanding users and all of that, like reading things now actually starts to make sense. I think if I would have read these 2 books like in the start of my creative design career, I wouldn't have been like, okay, yeah, just glance over that. It doesn't make sense now. But actually knowing what things are, I read I'll actually just show you.
Yeah.
Because I will forget the names. It's the user-friendly one. This one.
Cool.
I'll send you a link. And also, what is it? The Design of Everyday Thing. I think is it Norman? Don Norman, yes. His book. So that kind of like, as I read it each day, like I've this little ritual in the morning, 8 minutes of reading time. I know it's not much, but it's something in the morning that I do while I have my coffee.
I totally get it.
I just read and I'm like, yes, this makes sense. Yes, I can use this. Yes, I understand now what this means. So
crazy to think how that book was written.
Oh, I was like, okay, well, this was happening way before I was even a thought. Like I was not even on Earth yet. I'm not even a human yet. But yeah, that guy, like just insights from it. I mean, you can take it and make it your own. You don't need to follow it exactly by the book, but just making things your own, I think, is kind of what this role is all about. Like learning, make it your own, move on. But yeah, those 2 books were for me kind of like eye-opening lately. There are a few other things, but maybe if I read them again, they'll make more sense, but not now. Those are my 2 books.
Very cool. Very cool. I haven't read The Design of Everyday Things. It's on my bucket list. I've got a list of books. It's a lot to get through. I read this Hooked the other day, which was awesome. I don't know if you know it. Do you know Hooked?
No, not at all. No.
Apparently he's quite well known. Okay. But yeah, it's about creating addictive products, but obviously yeah, it's very, very cool. And yeah, he talks about like yeah, you read it, people read it. I'll put a link in the thing, but it's also quite
okay. Awesome.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it at that. Almari, this has been awesome. I think we could probably carry on chatting for a long time, but I know that these millennial minds can't pay attention longer. But yeah, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and joining today. It's been awesome. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, and you're welcome. It's been fun.
Great.
Chatting about all of this.
Yeah, it's nice talking about what you're passionate about, eh?
Definitely.
All those people out there, follow your passions. Cool. All right.
Go for it.
Thanks a lot, and we'll see you again.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much. Bye.
And scene.